Thank you everybody for coming out on this absolutely gorgeous day. It's going to be good to hear from our candidates. Just before we get started, I'm just going to go through sort of the ground rules and how we're going to structure this evening's event. And we have with us two state Senate candidates, Joe Gervais and Skip Whitmire. There's Skip and Joe. Oh, it was Spike. I'm sorry. I wrote it wrong here. It's my fault. Totally my fault. We have some statewide candidates. John Rogers, candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Josh Beckhofer, who's running for Treasurer. And Brooke Page, who's running for Secretary of State. And Auditor. You want to win the Secretary of State?
I want to win both.
Okay. And then we have two federal candidates. We have Gerald Malloy, who's running for the United States Senate, and Mark Kosker, who's running for the United States House of Representatives. So what we're going to do is we're going to open up by giving them each 2 minutes to introduce themselves to you and tell a little bit about the offices that they're running for and what they intend to do if they get elected. And then I'm going to break it down a little bit and ask some questions for the candidates who are running for the state Senate, and John Rogers, who's, if he wins as Lieutenant Governor, will preside over the Senate. So I thought they would be a good group. We can talk about, ask some questions about that. And then we'll talk about to the statewide candidates about the offices that they're running for with some specific questions about what they're going to do. And then we'll do the federal candidates as well. Then we're going to open it up to some what I call jump ball questions for all of them that all pertain to Vermont. Vermont policy, and then for the last 30 minutes of the evening, we'll open it up to you all for questions that you might have, either for the group as a whole or for specific candidates. But we want to make sure we give everybody enough time to present their views. So let's get it started with 2-minute introductions, and let's start with this side of the room, and we'll just go right along this way. And first up is Joe Malloy.
Thank you, Rob, and thank you, Carol, and Tony, Devon, and everybody for showing up here on a beautiful day. My name is Gerald Malloy. I'm running for the U.S. Senate against Bernie Sanders, and I guess to put it in a nutshell, I'm not happy about the direction of our state, our country. Our state is, and our country has become unaffordable and unsafe. Vermont, in particular, a place to leave. And I want to change it. I want to turn things around. I absolutely love Vermont. How am I going to do that? Well, I have 40 years of very, very relative experience, and that's business experience, government, military, foreign policy experience. A little bit about myself. Went to West Point, 22 years on active duty, served Europe, Asia, Persian Gulf, Middle East. I'm a combat veteran, been part of foreign policy that delivers peace. We don't have that now. Worked a few years in government, many parts of the government in operational roles, and last 16 years in business. So I looked at a couple of things I want to do is bring jobs to Vermont. I know I can do that. Secure our borders, get some discipline back in our government. This $36 trillion debt is literally dangerous for our entire economy. And make Vermont safe and affordable and a place to stay. I'm married, 4 kids. My youngest is 15, and so I'm seeing some of the things that are going on with kids. I want to have a better future for Vermont, and I want to deliver that for Vermont. So thank you.
Hey, is this working? My name's Mark Kirsten. I'm your Republican candidate for the U.S. House, and I aim to displace Becca Boleyn. I'm the logger, and I'm the best damn sugar maker in Vermont. We just won Blue Ribbon Best of Show in Addison County Fair, and some other award against the son of the guy that gives the award out, and we won first place on our dart show. So I do believe I have a very good chance of beating Becca Boleyn. I've seen her policies. I've seen what she did to Vermont for the last 10 years. I saw how she jammed the Global Warming Solutions Act down our throats during 2020 and presided over the Senate for a good long time. I hope to be your eyes and ears in Washington, D.C. and let you know what's going on. That's my campaign promise, that people will know what's going on. And that'll benefit not only Vermont, but it'll benefit I know his soul. He started the way I did, with nothing but a pickup truck and a few hand tools, and he worked his way up from nothing in Vermont his whole life. I know that type of soul because I am one. I've been here 51 years, and I want to give my full and complete endorsement to H. Brooks Page, because he spent 2 years of his life without any fanfare, fighting for our Constitution, taking a case pro se to the Supreme Court, and he would make an excellent Secretary of State. That's it.
Well, thank you, Mark, for the endorsement. I'm John Rogers, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor. I served for 16 years in the State House, 8 in the House, and 8 in the Senate. As many of you know, at that point, I served as a Democrat. But I was an old-style Vermont Democrat, and I like to tell people my grandfather, who was a Democrat, would not recognize any of the people who are serving in the State House who claim to be Democrats as Democrats. I grew up on a dairy farm in West Glover, and at that point, Democrats I like to think of as socially responsible and fiscally conservative. When you grow up on a dairy farm, you don't have a lot of extra money, and you don't spend beyond your means, which is what's happening in this state. I've been out for 4 years, and I decided to get back in because I don't like the direction the state is going. It's becoming unaffordable for regular people, as Mark said. I grew up on a dairy farm and started with very little other than a rusty truck and some hand tools. Hard work is what got me to where I am. And it's becoming harder for average working folks, blue-collar tradespeople, your average working-class person to make a living here. And I really want to get started on making change. I believe as Lieutenant Governor, I can help bring working-class Vermonters' voices back to the State House because they've been forgotten. The legislature operates in a vacuum, and they listen to only each other and the well-paid lobbyists. It's becoming unaffordable, and I'm worried that my grandkids aren't going to be able to make a living and live here. And so I stepped up, and I'm not one to complain and not try to do something about it. So I would appreciate everybody's support and spread the word. We think we have a real good chance of unseating David Zuckerman. I think this is one of the most important races in the state because the last thing I want to see is a Governor Zuckerman, and that is what he's waiting for. He's using the platform to promote himself until Phil Scott retires, and then he wants to move up. And if the legislature had the current makeup and David Zuckerman was governor, we would be going sideways even faster than we're going. So, thank you.
I guess let's start with Spike at the end, and we'll come back to the middle.
I'm Spike Whitmire, running for Bennington County State Senate, and I'm a husband, father, and grandfather of 2 beautiful little grandbabies. I live in Shasberry, Vermont. I've been a local businessman there for over 30 years in the building trades and construction. I've, in the meantime, as well as been a community servant for over 25 years at the same time, working in various fields from our local soup kitchen, feeding the poor and hungry and homeless, and working at actually started and founded a kids camp for children who have a parent incarcerated, and also live in low-income housing. I've started a teen center. We ran a teen center for a number of years for the youth in Bennington. Gives them a place to go and hang out and have good, clean fun. And most recently, I've served on a school board of a local private school. I'd like to take that life of community service to the State House and continue serving Vermont by representing Bennington County. I'm running for office because Vermont is becoming, like others have said, too expensive for the majority of the average citizens. Political agendas and government laws are being forced on us without any regard for the effect that they have on everyday citizens. And I'd like to stand up for the people and bring transparency, efficiency, and common sense perspective back to Montpelier. And I want to empower the voice of every citizen once again in Bennington County. So, thank you.
I'm Joe Jervis, and my life started here in Vermont, but I grew up in southern New England. My wife 13 years ago asked me I asked her if she ever wanted to move back. She said no, never, and no, never was thankfully only 5 months. Like Spike, I've got grandchildren, but I've got 3 beautiful great-grandchildren as well. And, that's why I'm running, is for the next generation. The direction we're going in is not good for the young adults and for the kids that are being raised. I'm running on 3 points: affordability, affordability, and affordability. If we don't fix affordability, we're not going anywhere as a state. We've also got issues around public safety I want to focus on, and with the affordability, affordable housing. I spent many years working in the tech industry, but lately I've been a sawyer making lumber, and I work with a lot of building trades that way, and I listen to the issues of overregulation that they're dealing with day in and day out. We need to get a lot simpler. I met somebody from Londonderry that's in the audience here, and they just had a citizens revolt as they had a 300+ page zoning bylaws presented to them, and they said no. My wife's a second shift nurse. I'm going to have the light on at 10 o'clock so she isn't attacked by bears when she comes in the driveway. I'm going to run my chainsaw on the weekend so I can have my firewood. I served in the military. I took an oath to defend the Constitution. I've watched the legislature just step all over our Constitution in recent years. And we need to bring back the support for our Constitution here in Vermont.
Hello, I'm Josh Beckhofer. I grew up in Addison County, in Cornwall. Before that, in New Haven, right down the road from Monument Farms Dairy. I'm a friend of the farmer. I went to UVM, and they say the only thing being harder than a Republican in Vermont is being a Republican at UVM. And there I learned that about treasuries, how the pension system works, and I saw that we were in a dangerous death spiral, a debt and death spiral for the state, and it's not being managed properly. I'm a younger candidate, and my generation will inherit what I believe is going to be a nightmare scenario where you have people who are growing older and need to draw on the pension, state employees, and we have eroded the tax base of this state, and we are going to continue eroding the tax base of the state so severely that there won't be a generation of born and raised Vermonters to go pick up the torch of this rich tradition and rich culture of Vermont life. And that's what I'm running on. And I'm not using this, I always say I'm a better economist than I am a politician. I work at Farm Credit East as an analyst. I see what farmers go through every day. I'm running for treasury, for state treasurer, as an end of itself, not a rung for something else, because I believe the state treasury, its finances, are its future, and if it doesn't have something sustainable for the future to inherit, it'll be a completely hollow economy. And I'm 25. In 25 years, I shudder to think that if we keep going down this path, what it's going to look like. All right, thank you.
I'm Brooke Page, and I'm from the town of Washington, Vermont, and I'm running for Secretary of State and Auditor of Accounts. And Rob doesn't want to mention the Auditor of Accounts thing because he thinks it's foolish to be running for 2 offices. So I want to explain that for you for just a second. Auditor of Accounts is actually a very important office. You're supposed to audit the accounts of the $8 billion business that is the state of Vermont. And Doug Hoffer, who is the incumbent there, has no credentials to do that job. when the state has to have an audit, they have to hire a big accounting firm out of Boston to do the audit, because he has no capacity to do so, nor does his the young fellow, Tim Ash, that he's grooming to replace him next time out. So I'm running, and I'm serious about running, Bob, but my intention is, if I'm successful, to immediately go to the governor and ask him to find a suitable, qualified replacement. And I specifically have somebody in mind. And that's a woman by the name of Linda Joy Sullivan, who you folks should know from down here, who's highly qualified, does federal bankruptcies and everything else. So while I'm running and I hope to win the auditor of accounts position, in the end I really don't want to serve in that position, but I want to have somebody that's highly qualified with expertise to do that job under the Secretary of State, which is the job I'd like to have for myself. I have a time. Anyway, Secretary of State is another misunderstood job. Everybody thinks it's just all about elections, and the biggest problems are in elections, but also the Secretary of State is responsible for the state archives, for the Office of Professional Regulation, acting as the scribe for the General Assembly, keeping and memorializing all of the activities of both the House and the Senate and other things. So I'm out of time, and as we go through the evening, I'll get back to really importantly about elections and all the bad things that Sarah Copeland Hayes are running against now, and Jimmy Kondo's her predecessor and arch ally in destroying Vermont's election process, and we'll talk about what they've done. Thank you, Ron.
Very good. Thank you, everybody. I've got your microphone.
Okay.
And I'll hand it back in just a second.
Hang on to it.
But,
Just didn't want to give it to Brooke.
all right, so for the next section, I want to talk to the Senate candidates and John Rogers, who's running for Lieutenant Governor, because if you win this race, you will be presiding over the Senate, and you're dealing with a lot of the same issues. So one of the biggest dynamics that we've seen in the last legislative session, the last 2 years, is the fact the Democrats and Progressives have obtained what's called a supermajority, which means that they can override Governor Scott's vetoes at will. And this is something that they've done on at least a half a dozen occasions, just this year and a few more the year before. And that has led to some policies that a lot of Vermonters probably don't particularly want to live with, one of which being the property tax increase we just got. Another one being the clean heat carbon tax that will be coming down the pike next year, depending upon the elections, and we'll talk about that one in another question. But my question for the two people running for Senate, the Senate right now is made up of 7 Republicans and 23 Democrats and Progressives. In order for Republicans to sustain a veto of Governor Scott, we need to get 11. So I'd like you all to talk a little bit about the balance in the Senate and why it's so important to bring some of that balance back. And we'll start with John.
Yes, thank you. It's so important because Governor Scott is one of he's the most popular governor in the country, which from my perspective means he has a mandate from Vermonters. Yet when he vetoed all those bills because he, like myself, believed Vermonters couldn't afford them, the legislature still overrode his veto. And so it is essential. Otherwise, we have no power to push back against the supermajority. So one of the things I want to do, if I can get elected, is help recruit more people to both the House and the Senate. It's essential that we get up to 11, as Rob said, but we need to build that beyond 11, and we need to recruit enough good candidates for the House so that we can get our numbers up in the House and also have the numbers there to sustain a governor's veto. It's just, there is no compromise anymore. The supermajority is doing what they want, and that's part of the reason that Vermont's become unaffordable, because there's no compromise. They've just run away with this legislation.
I originally was running for the Bennington 4 House District in this election. And, May 18th, we met with Governor Scott, and he talked about the need for these 4 additional senators, how critical it was to get at least 11 senators that would stand with him on the vetoes. So the next day when I found out Brian Campion was not running for re-election, I immediately started the petition process to get on the ballot. And with Dick Sears having recently passed away, we're in a unique situation where there is no incumbent for the first time in over 2 decades in this district. Spike and I are running against 4 Democrats or former Democrats. No slight on John over there. But these Democrats all supported the carbon bill, and I think that's an election key, is educating the electorate about this $17 billion bill that's coming at everybody, and doubling the cost of heating. It's not something Vermonters can afford. And the supermajority is like, get a blanket. That's their answer, get a blanket. And I think we can provide better answers, but we need to win these seats. And I think Bennington is a unique opportunity this time, with Democrats that have a bad voting record, and with no incumbents in there. So it's a total jump ball, and I'm excited about it.
Just to add to that, conservatives in Bennington deserve a voice, and they've been ignored for a long time. And it is important that, at the very least, Governor Scott has the ability to override these vetoes. They can't override his vetoes. There's just so much infighting and partisan politics in Montpelier, and it's just causing such government dysfunction. And we have to somehow, put all that aside and put the will of the people back as our, top priority. And I think with a more Republican and conservative senators in the House and in the Senate, we have a better chance of enabling the voice of everyone in Bennington, and not just the left. And with the rising taxes that are just and inflation that's just breaking the backs of everyday people. It's so important that the voices of everyone's recognized and represented in Montpelier. And right now I feel that just one side is represented. And so I look forward to, even in that playing field a little bit.
That one side is the special interest. It's not the voters.
All right, I'm going to throw this one over to the 2 candidates who are running for the Senate to open up this question. And it goes into what you were talking about, Joe, which is the clean heat standard and the carbon tax that it represents. Just a little background information for those who are in the audience here. What happened was they passed, the Global Warming Solutions Act in 2020. And under the Global Warming Solutions Act, we have mandates to reduce our carbon footprint by certain amounts, by certain goals, 2025, 2030, and 2050. In order to do that, they passed what is called the Clean Heat Standard Bill, which is Act 18, which deals with the thermal sector, how we heat our homes and cook our food, heat our businesses. So basically, fuel dealers will have to buy a carbon credit in order to sell you oil, propane, kerosene, or natural gas to heat your home. The cost of that carbon credit essentially functions as an excise tax on those fuels that will be passed along to you as the consumer. The latest estimate of how much that tax is going to be is about $3 a gallon in order for it to raise enough revenue to cover the programs that the majority wants to implement. But the rules are currently being written now by the Public Utilities Commission, and according to to Act 18, the law, those rules have to be voted on by the full legislature next year after this coming election. If the vote is no, then that tax does not land on your home heating bill. So I would like to ask the Senate candidates, how do you plan to vote on the Act 18 clean heat carbon tax when it comes up before the Senate sometime next year?
That's a funny question, because there's a flyer in the back that has a stop sign on the front and a commitment on the back from Spike and Joe that we will vote no.
It's going to be just like a regular old bill, so it can go to the governor. The governor has vetoed the clean heat carbon tax twice. The first time it was sustained in the House by one vote, and this year with the supermajority they overrode it in the Senate by one vote. And that one vote was Dick Sears, who is, rest his soul, no longer with us. So it's important that we win these seats. Now I want to ask John on the same question about the clean heat carbon tax. I mean, you come from a real rural part of the state where, you know, a lot of people don't heat with anything other than oil, propane. Maybe they got a wood stove too. So tell us a little bit about how you would approach that issue as we come into the legislative session as Lieutenant Governor.
I spent 8 years on the Senate Natural Resources and Energy Committee, and every single bill that the legislature has passed having to do with what they consider climate change has been regressive. Every single one of them have taxed more on the poor people than anybody else. This is no different. People in rural communities are going to get hit the hardest, but like their renewable energy standard that they passed this year, an extra $100 million on our electric bills around the state, and we know from past studies that poor Vermonters pay a larger percentage of their income on their utilities than anybody else. The other programs that they're doing take, like Efficiency Vermont, they take a chunk out of your electric bill every month. That's being used to subsidize people who are putting up heat pumps and insulating their houses, which is great work, except that poor people pay that tax, and poor people are not taking advantage of the credits because they can't come up with the matching funds. So if you drive around in poor communities, you're not going to see heat pumps on the side of their house. You're not going to see Teslas in their driveway, which they also pay for the tax rebates on electric cars. You're not going to see solar panels on their house. There again, hundreds of millions of dollars Vermonters have been overcharged for their electricity, and it goes to people who net meter, who have solar panels in their house, on their house, in their front yard. I totally support people putting up solar panels if they can afford to do it. I think we should be making as much energy as we can, as close to the end user as possible. But poor people should not be paying for it. And that's what's happening. That's what's going to happen with the clean heat standard. So if I have to make a vote in my position, I will sustain the governor's veto. I'll do everything I can to defeat it. I personally do a lot for climate change right on my own farm. My farm sequesters the carbon and provides ecosystem services for thousands of Vermonters, but all I get for it is a $22,000 a year property tax bill. So their regressive costs are doing nothing for climate change except breaking the backs of working class and poor people. And that's one of the main reasons I got back into politics, and I'm hoping to be there to make a difference.
All right, my next question again, I'll start with the senators, and this is really one that is not really specific to Bennington County, but certainly important to Bennington County, is school choice, because we are right in, here in the shadow of Burr and Burton, and school choice plays a very big part in the educational community here, and as well as the economy. You've got a lot of great independent schools down here, and there is a movement afoot in the legislature, some in the House and some in the Senate, that want to eliminate school choice. And they are trying to scapegoat in many cases the independent schools for the high property taxes that we're paying, which is ridiculous because it's a very small percentage of the actual overall education budget that we spend on the independent schools and tuitioning. And where we do, it is by and large cheaper than it is for what we pay for public schools. So tell me a little bit about what you would do to protect school choice, assuming that you would, or if you wouldn't, if you agree that we need to do something about it. And then I'll also pass this on to John because you're from the kingdom and very similar dynamic at play in your neck of the woods as well. So senators.
Well, I would definitely support school choice if that became an option. I think the more...
Excuse me, would you please stand up? Yeah.
Sorry. I think the more power we get back to the parents, the better. I think the parents should be making all the choices on their children. And if they have the option to go to an approved independent school and it's private and they're paying school tax like everybody else, they should have that choice. I know it's not always the case. There's not always a private school within reach of everyone, but there's, Vermont currently has, limited school choice because there's a lot of areas that private school or public schools don't cover. And, so there's a framework in place there already for that. And like you're saying, it's a proven fact that private schools usually function at a much cheaper level than the public schools. The private school that I'm involved with on the school board, as a matter of fact, we run our school for almost less than half of what the public schools run for. And we're an approved independent school with excellence as our motto. And so it would not only would it be, return the choice to the parents, who I think the parents should have the choice of that have to do with their children's education, but it also save the state a lot of money, realistically. Schools are, in most cases, crowded. It's not like, it would put the schools out of business, and if anything, it would force the schools to maybe make some changes and tighten their belt buckle a little bit and do some things that they need to do to make their schools more efficient. And right now, it's, as we all know, school costs have skyrocketed, public school costs have skyrocketed, and the current leadership and current legislature seems to just continue to sign blank checks and hand it to them and let that dysfunction continue. And so, if they had to, compete with some private schools and some school choice, I think it would probably be good for them, the public school as well.
I as well would be in support of school choice. One of the things I've been seeing in recent years is the indoctrination that's going on in the public schools. They're going and taking measures to restrict certain schools. If a school is a religious school and believes the science that there's two genders, then the state deems them to be discriminatory and doesn't want to use state funding for that. I don't think that is appropriate. And I think for the public school system to be efficient, there's got to be competition there. And if the public schools are losing to private schools, they're going to figure out what they're doing wrong and be more efficient there. We need to stop the blank checks, like Spike said. Figure out where the overhead is in the school systems and cut out that fat so that we can afford these schools. Thanks.
Yeah, like Rob said, around the state we have some great independent schools that are basically the de facto public school in many areas, and they've been serving our communities well up in the Northeast Kingdom. I wouldn't want to see any change there. But when we talk about education funding, I think there's been, in the last 20 years, like 28 studies of what we should do about education and education funding. Yet the legislature has not really taken any of those studies and done anything with them. And so when they act surprised when we have a double-digit increase in our property taxes, it's no surprise to anybody that was paying attention. I believe it's time to start from scratch and build a new system from the ground up. We have gotten to the point where Vermonters cannot afford the system that we have, And if the legislature doesn't do something major in the next 2 years, or in the next year, we'll see a double-digit increase in our property taxes again next year. We have cities around the country that have a larger population than Vermont that have one supervisory union, and I think we have 54. There's huge savings to be made in administration, and that's one of the reasons the independent schools can do it cheaper, is because they run leaner than the public schools. And part of the problem is that the NEA and the School Boards Association and the Superintendents Association are all sitting on the sidelines in every education committee meeting, and the chairs look to them and see if they're shaking their head yes or no. That has to stop. I totally support our teachers and support staff in our schools. They're the ones that are doing the hard work on the ground and dealing with all these social issues that teachers shouldn't even have to deal with. But the administration is fat, and that's where we need to cut costs and find efficiencies and use our fewer supervisory unions to add buying power. I think there's a lot of things that could be done to make school funding much more affordable. And the bottom line is we want to provide a great education for all our kids, but Vermonters have to be able to afford it. And right now, that's not happening.
So I want to keep the schedule here, so we're running out of time for the Senate candidates. But I did want to ask John Rogers one question that is specific to the lieutenant governorship that doesn't apply to the Senate candidates. And that is the lieutenant governorship in Vermont is kind of an interesting position in that it doesn't really have a defined role beyond overseeing the Senate and presiding over the Senate. So it gives you a lot of opportunity to be creative in how you do that job. I remember, Brian Doobie, when he was lieutenant governor, made it his mission in the office to be an ambassador to Canada and other countries to bring businesses into the state. When Phil Scott was the lieutenant governor, he used it as an opportunity to go around and do a job, in a different town, in a different industry, every week, or I think it was every week that he did something like that, so he got to really understand the economy. David Zuckerman, our current lieutenant governor, is using the opportunity to go around and push what he calls banned books, which is, given the challenges that the state is facing, is kind of an odd choice. But I am curious to know how you would use your creativity and opportunity to shape the lieutenant governorship under a Rogers lieutenant governorship.
Yeah, thank you for the question. And from my perspective, I've watched David Zuckerman, and quite frankly, that hasn't really helped Vermonters, Dave's mission. He's mostly using that position as a way to promote himself and a place to hold a statewide office because he's waiting for Governor Scott to retire and he would like to be governor. That's one of the main reasons I stepped up. But what I would like to do, number one, I want to bring regular Vermonters' voices back into the legislature. I will work with other senators to craft good legislation that helps average Vermonters. I will fight against legislation that is bad for working class Vermonters. The lieutenant governor, current lieutenant governor, has never done that. I helped put on 2 different rallies this spring to push back on all these costs. Citizen, not getting paid, taking a day off from work. I went down there with 2 friends of mine, and we set up these rallies and put hundreds of people into the State House to say to the legislature, we've had enough, we support the governor's veto. It didn't do a whole lot of good. But I can work with senators, and the other thing that I can do is help take what is happening in the legislature and distill it so that regular people can understand what's going on, how their senators and representatives are voting, and how those bills are going to affect them. Because the media today does a poor job of getting those points across. The media covers the highlights. They'll talk to the leader of the Democratic Party and the leader of the Republican Party. They'll get the high points and they move on to the next subject. and Vermonters don't know how that bill is going to affect them, and I think that is something that needs to really happen. The third thing, I want to work with Governor Scott and use the position to travel around the state and recruit more people that I think should be in the State House. It is really hard to get people to run for positions in the House and the Senate. Personally, it's probably cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars in my service over the last 20 years. Because when I'm campaigning, if you don't know, I do stonework and excavation for a living. All of my work is in the construction season. There's not a lot of it to be done in the winter. And so every time I'm out campaigning, I'm not working, I'm not making money. So it is hard for the average person to make that sacrifice, but there's ways to do it, and it is very worthwhile because one person can make a difference. And so I want more people who run small businesses, more people who've signed the front of checks instead of just the back, and more people that can do math. Quite frankly, the math is not working out for Vermonters. And it seems like, you know, they say there's literary people and there's math people. It seems like the progressives are all literary people because none of them can do math. And so that's a few of the things that I hope to do, but I really want to, I think it's a great platform to speak to Vermonters and speak for Vermonters in the State House, and that's what I'd really like to do.
Okay, now I'm going to switch gears and talk to our constitutional office candidates, Brooke Page and Josh McOver. And Brooke, let's start with you because your jobs that you're seeking are different, Secretary of State and Auditor and State Treasurer. So my first question to you, Brooke, is what is the biggest challenge facing Vermont from the Secretary of State's office point of view?
Hold on, I like to know how long I've gone, because it always seems like I've been talking for a minute and it winds up being 20 minutes. The Secretary of State's office and the incumbent Secretary of State, who was the Speaker of the House prior, along with Jimmy Condos, who at the time was the Secretary of State, engineered Act 60, which has given us universal vote by mail, vote harvesting, the unequal availability of ballot collection boxes, and all of this violates the state constitution. And I'll get back to that in just a second. But what has happened, Jim knew he had troubles, and so he just kind of headed for the hills and let Sarah take over. Of course, Sarah's a unique individual, and apparently everybody in the elections department, save one, decided to get on out of town. Chris Winters left pretty quickly, shortly thereafter Will Senning and J.P. Isabella. So now you have the first real shot at this universal vote by mail carrying on all of its other problems, and you have no institutional memory. Nobody there has done this before, and it's showing already. You heard that they didn't have the statewide canvassing committee on time, and they said, oh, well, we had some computer problems. Well, somebody in the state IT department tells me they were hacked and being held for ransom, for crying out loud. And apparently when the state did not relent and give them 50 grand, and they threatened to track them down and find out who they were, the information was released, and so they were able to have the canvassing committee day leave. But beyond that, all of the information that was collected from statewide candidates for financial information wasn't double-checked by Mark who replaced Will Senning. And so several of the candidates' personal information, Social Security numbers, and does everybody, if I say EFT numbers, do you know what that means? Raise your hands if you don't. Okay. EFT numbers is electric funds transfer, basically your bank account number. And that was included in the information if you were getting a refund. So several candidates had this information on PDFs on the Excel spreadsheet that was put out for everybody to have. And as soon as I started, I contacted Mark Hogue quietly and said, you better get this off before these people start to have real troubles. And he said, oh yeah, well we're aware of this, but there's a bigger problem somehow, and we've never figured out what this means. He said the town clerks released all sorts of personal information on candidates, and we don't know of any personal information that town clerks would have had to put out on the internet. But that aside, I said, we've got to break the links to the PDFs so that people can't go and look at this information. He said, oh, we're working on it, we're working on it. 3 weeks later, they still haven't done it. And I've talked to an IT person that I know pretty well, matter of fact, Dan Feliciano. He says it's easily done. All you do is redirect the address to a blank account. But they still haven't done it. I went the night before last, I go test every once in a while and see if the address is still working. Oh, it's still there. Social security numbers, EFT numbers. So this is just a sampling of what's in store for us when the general election arrives. And you know, the state constitution says, section 47 of chapter 2 says basically that for statewide candidates, the election will be held on a day. The election is a day, not a season, not a month, not whenever you feel like mailing your ballot in. On a day. And you are to gather in your town clerk or city clerk's office to register your vote. When the polls are closed, the election officials in your town, basically town clerks and members of the Board of Civil Authority, are supposed to calculate all of the offices, figure out who the winner was. Those results are to be bound up, sealed up, and sent to Mount Pelier, to the State House for the General Assembly to tally and figure out the total on the day that the statewide canvassing committee meets in January. None of that happens. We send it off, we phone the Secretary of State's office, they do something magical with the information, they send it off to someplace in Washington State where they do their magical thing on it, and eventually some sort of result comes back. Okay? Now, whether there's election fraud or not, I don't know. But also the Secretary of State doesn't know, because they have no authority or any funds to do any investigation. Jim Condos used to say, oh, we have virtually no election fraud in the state. And I go, how do you know that? Yeah, who knows? Anyway, I'm way out of time. I'm 5 minutes with you. But my point is, we don't know about the fraud. But what people do know in their hearts is they think something's up. And many of these people don't vote anymore. So the election problems, the election interference is the fact that the Secretary of State, the progressives and Democrats, allow this atmosphere of distrust to fester. And many people that I talk to have given up on voting. And those are the people that we need to get back to fix this problem. I'm sorry I read it for a while.
Well, that's very... I want to talk to you a little bit more, but when we're done. Look, Josh, back over. Tell us a little bit about the Office of Treasurer and what you see as the greatest challenges facing that office should you be elected.
Got it, yeah. So the Office of Treasurer is an interesting one because a lot of people don't understand what the Treasurer can do or what they do or even who the State Treasurer is. So my strategy is going to be three-pronged. So the State Treasurer disperses funds for all the activities that occur in the state that are approved by the legislature and the executive branch of the state. But they also have some other interesting functions that have been used in recent years as a political football to do things like housing, as a political, basically, ladder climbing. So my strategy is three-pronged. It's going to be reforming like the pension management, and it's looking at why we have so much investment in BlackRock, for example, because I fundamentally do not believe that monopolies, even competitive monopolies in things like this, are a good thing. $10 trillion, now probably $12 trillion under investment by BlackRock is not a good thing. I don't approve of it, and I think that the money that BlackRock obtains I know that it goes into places like Invitation Homes and Blackstone, which are buying houses, which shifts out the demand curve for housing and makes housing more expensive. So that's one thing I want to tackle. The other one is VT Saves. So VT Saves is slated to launch next year. Now put your hand up if you know what VT Saves is. Let's see, 1, 2. So VT Saves is going to take 5% of your W-2 wages and put it aside in an IRA. How we know to opt out of this, nobody knows. How we know where this will go and who's contracted, nobody knows. But in less than a year, this will be launched, and the logistics have not been appropriately communicated to the citizens of Vermont. 5% is a lot of money to me. And I think many of Vermonters my age and older, they'll see this money coming out and they don't know where it's going or why it's been taken out, and there will be no communication on how to opt out. So that's another thing I want to tackle. It's a huge challenge. The last one is the big political football in the room, that's invest in VT. You may see the state treasurer, currently Mike Pichak, talks about this throwing money at housing, and he's building a few housing units here or there. I don't believe that the state treasurer's office should be a political football, and I think there's a lot better things that we could be using invest in VT for. For example, Kirby, Vermont, which is a town of about 492 residents, just took out a $1 million revolving line to pay for flood relief and for flood relief going down the road. Now, some quick math will tell you that the principal balance for every citizen in the town of Kirby would be about $2,000. Now, most Vermonters I talked to, and I had 700 petition signatures, cannot afford a $500 emergency expense, let alone to incur an additional $2,000 of debt. So I think this is a huge problem, and I think Invest in VT could buy tranche in that and sort of help along those citizens. And this will be occurring much more often. It's not just Kirby. Other towns in the flood zones will be they'll be taking out $1 million+ revolving lines with banks. The Sunset was generous enough to offer this line, but it's going to be risky, and down the road, as the towns age, it's going to get even riskier. The rates will go up, which will make it more expensive, which will drive people out of these areas, which will make it, in fact, more expensive as fewer and fewer people are servicing this greater and greater debt. So I see this as an issue for not only the mountain area in Vermont, but the entire state. You know, I thought I was safe in Addison County, then Middlebury got catastrophic flooding later last summer. So those are the three major problems I want to tackle as Vermont Treasurer, and I know that the Treasury position is not the most widely known, but the power the Treasurer holds is immense, and the potential for creative solutions that are being completely ignored are considerable. So that's my position. Thank you.
So this is less of a policy question and more of a political question based on what you were just talking about, Josh, and that is these positions are extremely important. They control very important aspects of our lives, and our political lives, and our financial lives. But as you said, nobody really knows who the treasurer is. They don't know what the job is. So what are the challenges that you're facing as candidates for offices? The governor, everybody's focused on that. The House races, everybody knows them personally. And you're sort of stuck in that middle zone where you've got to run a statewide campaign, but it's hard to raise that amount of money because people are focused on the other statewide campaigns that are more, and they're not, and you can't go door to door and hit every house in the state. So what are the challenges, and how do you overcome those?
Well, you'd be surprised. The current treasurer has raised more money than the governor's office. He's raised more money than I believe anybody in state history. He's raised $250,000 for that position, largely from out of state. So it's possible to raise money. I work a full-time job, so I can't take out that much time, but I just talked to every individual that getting petition signatures is a great exercise, because people said, I'm afraid of what the future generations will inherit. So touching on that chord is, people will inherit this. They will have to suffer the consequences of profligacy and waste today, and just lack of creativity. So it's just touching on those issues as much as I can. The future is what matters.
Brooke, what are your challenges, and how are you going to overcome them to get your name out there and and get the people to vote, not just to vote, but for you.
Well, sadly, as most of you know, this isn't my first rodeo. But, since 2008, I guess, or 2012, I've run in various races. And not so much now, but earlier on, I came to the realization that my opportunity for success was rather limited. But I realized that that was a great gift in a sense, because I didn't have to worry about what I said. I didn't have to worry about this little group over here being offended or that. I just made me a truth teller. And it still applies today. I don't ask for people to donate money to my campaign. Matter of fact, Sarah Copeland, the Secretary of State, put out her little snitch list, and I was right on there. You know, has failed to file the financial monthly things, and I'm going, and then she has a little asterisk on. They may not have had to if they didn't raise or spend more than $500, which I had not. So I didn't belong on the list at all. Of course, she's raised about 25, 30,000 so far. And also early on for statewide races, I said, you know, yard signs. I said, in a statewide campaign for an obscure office, it makes no sense for me to ask people for money to do it, nor to put them out, because they'll all wind up down at the road crew office for me to have to go pick back up. And yard signs are important in local races, okay? Because Joe goes around in the community and talks to people, and if they like him, they'll put his yard sign in their front yard. And then other people may come up to the neighbor and say, what about this Joe guy? Well, in a statewide race, it's like, you know, makes no sense at all. And so my thing is to get out, do forums like this, get in debates with Sarah Copeland-Hazen and with Doug Hoffer, the auditor of accounts, and reveal, you know, their shortcomings. You know, Sarah.
Just to interrupt for a second, we have a debate scheduled?
Several, with both Doug and with Sarah.
Okay, well, when might those be, so we can know?
Mid-October, unfortunately, you know, after.
After the ballots go out and half of them have been voted, they've agreed to debate you, huh?
Yes, right. You know,
See, that's a problem with
of course it is, and you know, I'll get out. I generally can get some newspaper coverage and things like that. I do a little bit of advertising, mostly in the penny savers and with folks that I know that are kind of kind to me in their editorial pages. But you know, the thing is that I have to express to people that what Doug Hoffer is not doing, which is doing auditing the accounts, and what Sarah Copeland-Hazen is doing, running an election that has nothing to do with the state constitution and seems to not really care about it. I actually have two complaints in with her right now under 2458.
I've got to move on to the federal candidates, so we're not going through that sheaf of paper.
No. But my point is, before the ballots go out, she has to answer to the fact that she's running an unconstitutional campaign. And that sheet of paper should be very, very interesting.
Thank you. Very good. All right, let's move on to the federal candidates. I'm going to ask for that microphone so I can do this kind of
So I
stuff.
can have it.
And let's start out with Mark Koster. Mark, there are a lot of crises that are happening at the federal level. Spending, we have a border crisis, we have inflation. What can you do if elected to this office? What can you bring to the job that, and what will your priorities be in terms of tackling the issues at the federal level?
I don't like your question. First of all, I want to say something about Joe Jervis. Probably none of you know that when the Senate seat came up, he did a high-speed power shift. In 24 hours, he got 145 signatures, submitted them to the county clerk, and he was on the ballot. So I'm a little slower than Joe. I talked a little slower, but my math is extraordinarily good. I understand the deficit. I understand all the problems around the nation. I understand what's going on in Vermont. I understand what's going on overseas. So he's got questions. I'm a tenacious fella. Anything I set out to do in my life, I accomplished. And I intend to participate in accomplishing many different things. I went to the border myself in May of 22, saw what was going on. We got to close the border. The unaccompanied minors, of which they've lost more than 300,000. I was there handing them Bibles, snacks, bottles of water, and in those Bibles in Spanish was a number in case they got in trouble for somebody to call. More than 300,000 missing children, that's not acceptable. We're going to end the wars. We're going to stop the mandates, and we're going to repeal the Smith Modernization Act, which allows the media to lie to you carte blanche, and has been since 2012. You got more problems you want to ask me about?
Well, I do.
Okay, I might like your question better.
All right, well maybe I'll put it in a little bit of a different way. How would you represent Vermont in the House of Representatives differently than the person that you're running against?
Like I said, I'm good at math. I want to be a voice for Vermonters in DC. I want to be ears for them and be willing to listen to them. Our Governor Scott is going to need somebody that's willing to listen to his concerns because he will have many. There are going to be a lot of problems coming down the line, and I want to be there in case Governor Scott wants to reach out. Like I said, I understand math. The person I'm running against left our state with more than $9 billion in unfunded pensions as Senate Pro Tem. How's that sound, Mr. Treasurer candidate? $9 billion in unfunded pensions? I'm for Vermonters. What happens first when everything collapses? Those pensions are gone. Those people, all those state workers, the road crew, the state, where's the money? What goes first when things collapse? So we're going to have to pull things together. We've got to pull the country back together. We've got to have a stronger majority in the House than just one. And we got to hold the Senate. And we're going to take the presidency.
Thank you. Gerald? I pose the same set of questions to you from the Senate perspective.
Okay, thank you, Rob. I had kind of a nice little break there, but so I would kind of tie it back to what's happening in Vermont. I talked about it earlier. Unaffordable, unsafe, and a place to live. Several things. I guess first off, traveling around the state, and I go all over the state. We have the fentanyl crisis here in Vermont. Burlington, Springfield, St. Johnsbury, Bennington, Brattleboro, Rutland, they're in trouble. So, like Mark said, securing the border, nothing against immigrants, that's what Congress stresses. We need some reform, we can do that. I visited talked with border folks very recently. I've been to many different border locations. I think if you remember, I worked with DHS 17 years ago. 17 years ago, the border was out of control with crime and drugs pouring into our country. Now it's fentanyl. So, in addition to securing the borders, I want to punish China, who's pumping in the ingredients into Mexico, into our country, in Mexico. So that's part of the safeties, and also start enforcing, back to blue, not Democrat blue, blue police, and back then get rid of progressive prosecuting movement. On the unaffordable side, the current administration has grown the national debt by about 27% just since last 3.5 years. That's absolutely unsustainable. The dumping money into the economy, I've talked about Milton Friedman, actually visited his place in Fairleigh, which we had one just yesterday. But dumping money into the economy creates inflation. We're still feeling the effects of that. I think we're kind of teetering if we're going to have a recession or not. So fiscal responsibility, start addressing the $36 trillion debt. And in terms of affordable, like I mentioned, I said earlier, I've worked for Raytheon, I've worked for Lockheed Martin, I've worked in technology fields, I have an MBA, I have a graduate certificate in data analytics. So I've got relationships across the industry. I know I can bring jobs to Vermont. Vermont needs jobs. And technology jobs, and innovation jobs. So I have some plans to that, to work with our Republican governor to do that. I would say I'm very confident no one has walked into more businesses than I have in the last 3.5 years. And it was mentioned, there's too much regulation and overburden on businesses. So I hear it all the time, I'm sure you do too. I'm leaving or I'm thinking about leaving. So there's a few things. And then one of the other things, foreign policy, I mentioned, boots on the ground. I've been in Europe, Asia, Persian Gulf, Middle East. I've been part of successful foreign policy. We don't have that at all now. There's 2 new wars, both of them could have been avoided. Mark's right, the new administration is going to stop them both. But frankly, we were part of that. Funding Iran that funds Hamas and Hezbollah, and the way we pulled out of Afghanistan, that debacle kind of emboldened Putin to go out and attack Ukraine. So as a U.S. Senator, it has an impact on foreign policy that actually benefits the United States. Those are a few things.
Very good. So a question for both of you, because we have almost, well, basically we have a 50-50 Senate right now. We have almost a 50-50 House. What approaches would you take, and whichever one of you wants to answer first can answer first, what approaches would you take to building coalitions, perhaps across party lines?
Sure. So I'm running against Bernie Sanders, and I got to tell you, it's been, especially the last couple of years, watching him very closely. It's been 30 or 40 years of the same false promises, and I think, if we talk about, and we can laugh at it, because it's true. You talk about healthcare, education, housing, I'll add in energy, I'll add in food costs. They've gone up, that's a fact. So, I want to actually deliver solutions related to all those. I am more than willing to work across the aisle to get that done. I will say for Vermont, one of the things we can stress as candidates, we have the Get Real platform, which is a great common sense platform. But, for Vermont, right now we have a socialist and 2 far left representatives in Congress. And we have the supermajority here in the legislature. We need to talk about getting some balance back in. Bernie's what does he call himself? An independent socialist Democrat. So he's, Vermont's not getting a bite of the apple from him. We're just not, because he's kind of right in the middle there. And you see a lot of flip-flopping going on with administrations. But I hope another thing that we can talk about to the people of Vermont is, if you look at the Democrat platform right now, what it's all about is more spending, more and more and more spending. And I hope Vermont has realized we're going to pay for that. And we can't, so it's just going to be more taxes or more debt. And that's absolutely unsustainable. So I can tell you, I was out at the RNC, I met about 30 members of Congress. I'm excited to be part of Congress and work both sides. I can tell you, I met Senator Manchin. Boy, I like him. He's got some great ideas. Good guy. So, not opposed to working on the other aisle, both sides of the aisle. But I'm going to draw the line at the Constitution. And we have some things where, frankly, the Democrats over here, Republicans over here, there's a different view about tax and spend versus less government, and some other things like the president, paying for somebody's college bill. There's some things I'm not going to bend on. The constitutional that are going on, so that's where I draw the line.
What's your question again?
I'm going to work across it. I'm going to ask you a different question than I was thinking about.
Oh, come on. I like that question.
You like that question? Okay, I'll tell you what. I'll ask the second question. You can pick which one you want to answer. Because one of the things, listen, listening to Gerald's answer, one of the things that I find that we have here in the state, and I think it's similar in who we send to Washington, is that people that we send to represent us don't really have a good grasp of what it is to work hard for a living. You're a logger, and that's what your ad said. Send a logger to Washington, So how are you going to take that experience of having worked manual labor, built a business, worked in your community? How are you going to take that and apply it to governing as a representative in Congress?
Well, you know what loggers are good at, don't you?
Do I want to know?
Thinning out culls and identifying rock. There's an awful lot of waste, fraud, and corruption down here. There's some rotten things going on. There's no question about that. So I watched what was going on in the house. I watch it all the time. And very often it's right down party lines. They all vote this way, they all vote that way, right? And then there's a few that cross over and vote with one or the other. It's very challenging to work across the line there. I believe that there will be some changing, like Tulsi Gabbard, for the love of country, leave the Democrat Party, like John Rogers here. You know, I've got an eye on the scene down there. I've been learning a little bit about gathering intelligence. You know, I'm kind of unsuspected of being intelligent, but I learned a little bit about gathering intelligence. It's pretty much boots on the ground. You know, I have the endorsement of the former Director of National Intelligence, General Flynn. That isn't by a coincidence, a stroke of luck. Some hick from the hills got General Flynn's endorsement. I got a friend down here, he's also taught intelligence to generals at the National Intelligence Task Force. He's been sitting there in the House identifying who's who and what's what and how they've been voting and who you can work with and who you can't, you know. So he's been in there every week, week after week. He also endorsed me too. So I think we can work with him. And I believe we're going to have, you know, other than like the people that pull the fire extinguisher to, you know, the fire alarm to get everybody out of the building, we can't work with people like that.
He lost his primary, so you don't have to. He lost his primary, so you don't have to work with him.
Yeah, that's, you know, that's part of the game. So I don't even, somebody talked about lobbyists and special interest groups, right? What House candidates are doing right now on the Democrat side and on the Republican side, they're spending 8 hours a day calling rich people begging for money. That's what they're doing. They make an appearance here and there, but that's what my campaign team wants me to do. Just sit there in the House calling people all day long begging for money. It's like, no, not doing it. I'll spend my own money. I got some donations coming in, but I'm not doing it. I'm not going to beg. I've never begged for anything, and I'm not going to start begging rich people for money. I'm running for office to represent the citizens of Vermont to the best of my ability, all the citizens of Vermont. And I don't care what political party you're from. I don't care what how they identify, and no, I won't use your preferred pronouns. So, you know, the Constitution is the way to go. They ignore it. So one thing I watched there, and I was there in person, there was a bill about upholding a current law. There's a law in place that holds China to a 25% tariff on exported solar panels. And China was skirting that current law by shipping the solar panels out of Vietnam and Taiwan and Thailand and four countries, right? The House voted not to uphold that current law. And there were Republicans that, because we have a Republican majority, there were actually Republicans that voted not to uphold that current law. And what's that do? That hurts the American solar manufacturers because they're flooding the market with garbage solar panels, avoiding the tariffs. So, you know, paying attention to what's going on, standing by the Constitution, House makes appropriations, the House declares war, the House does impeachments. What more do you want?
I think it's a good answer, and we're right at the 15-minute mark for your segment, so I'm going to move on to the next segment if you're done. That was good. I knew I just had to get you warmed up, Mark. And then you come out. All right, so for the next segment, I'm just going to, I call this a jump ball, and I'm just going to ask the whole group some questions that are, I think, on a lot of voters' top of mind. And let you sort of like Jeopardy, hit the table if you want the microphone, if you want to answer. And the first one I'll throw out to the whole group is Vermont has been seeing, in the last few years, a rise in crime, in a lot of cases, a rise in violent crime. We just saw a murder outside Red Square, the bar in Burlington. Right here in Dorset, actually, where my brother-in-law and his family lived, there was a body thrown a couple of years ago, I think, after a drug deal gone bad in Dorset. So this is, you know, it's happening all across the state. So what do our candidates think about the rising crime situation, and what do you think some of the solutions might be? Who would like to answer the question? John Rogers.
No buzzer here, but I'll start out. Other than affordability, public safety has been the second most popular issue that people want to talk about. I have some friends that have shops in Burlington. Their business is off like 20% because Burlington now has a reputation of being unsafe. But it's not just Burlington. It's up in the Northeast Kingdom. It's Newport, in St. Johnsbury, and there's even in the small towns, people know where the drug dealers are. And we have to give the police and our judiciary the tools that they need to stop the gangsters and the drug traffickers, because that's where the majority of the crime is coming from. It's where the majority of the violence is coming from. And even when you take it down to the level of the retail theft, the other thing the businesses are having to worry about, not only are the people not coming to town to spend money, but their retail theft has reached an epidemic. And so their businesses are really struggling. And when they turn someone in for retail theft, they say 2 days later, I'll see the same person walking down the street again. So we have to stop the revolving door. We have to give the police what they need, because I believe the biggest part of the problem is the huge amount of drugs that are coming in. They're organized gangs. They bring with them violence and crime, and those things have to be cleaned up.
Can I take the same question on behalf of Tor Nelson?
Well, let's give the folks who are here on the panel a chance to answer for themselves.
Okay.
So if you want to answer the question for yourself, but then we'll see how much time we've got.
You know, John started touching on one of the points. As I talk to business owners, it's the fact that these violent crimes are happening, and then they're immediately out with no cash bail. So we've got to fix that aspect of the problem. You know, the police are doing a good job policing, and then the state's attorney's office isn't doing anything, and we're not getting the prosecutions. And that's a problem we've got to fix as well.
Brooke, did you want? Yeah, I just
wanted to point out, Secretary of State and Letter of Accounts isn't real big in crime. But the Attorney General's office, I should mention that both the Attorney General and the current Treasurer don't really want to have their current jobs. They want to be governor, and they've made that quite clear. And if you go to their websites, you'll see them talking about all sorts of things that have nothing to do with their offices, you know, all the social justice warrior here. In the case of the Attorney General's office, the Attorney General is supposed to represent the people in the state in court. And the other half of that job is the Attorney General is also the chief law enforcement officer for the state. And in that office, excuse me, Charity Clark has been totally vacuous. You know, the Attorney General is supposed to coordinate with the Attorney Generals of other surrounding states to try to eliminate and reduce crime. And we just don't see that happening. That's why and also with the Providence up in Canada, we don't see any coordination to try to stop all the movement of drugs into Vermont and through Vermont.
Next question I have. Campaign for Vermont did a poll in December before the last legislative session, and I think the number one issue that they found that most Vermonters agreed upon, and it was like 90%, is that affordable housing is a real problem in Vermont, and not just affordable housing in the sense of low-income housing, but housing that anybody is able to afford. What do you all think we need to do in order to make it easier, more affordable to build housing and therefore buy or rent housing?
Hey,
Who wants to hit that buzzer?
I can start on the federal level. I think going back to massive overspending, and that caused inflation, which I think most economists in the world saw was going to happen, except our government. So we had record high, 40-year high inflation, and then we went into this, and they're still in it, trying to tamp down the inflation. And as we've done that, we've seen interest rates go from 3 to 7 plus. So better fiscal responsibility will impact the ability of all Americans. You know, 3% mortgage versus 7% mortgage, big difference. So, and that was kind of done. I don't know if it was on purpose. Seemed like it. You know, if you know a little bit about economics, that you know, let's not do that kind of management of our fiscal responsibility anymore.
Affordable housing. You know, I lived here in Vermont when the interest rate was 25%. When I was trying to buy land and build a house, the interest rate was 25%. You know what the interest rate was in Austria when they convinced the Austrian people through propaganda to vote for Hitler? 25%. When I bought my skidder, I negotiated, this was back in 2000, I negotiated from a 15% interest rate down to 12.5%. So we got to do something. But one of the things on a federal level, I don't know what we can do for Vermont's affordable housing project other than elect Republicans. You know, we've got a legislature that just made Act 250 more restrictive for 97% of the state. How are you going to create affordable housing if your Act 250 is more restrictive for 97% of the state? Just small issues like Rescue Inc. wanted to put in a substation in West Townsend on a gravel bar way above the floodplain. $250 million in permits to make that happen. We're going to have to do some serious things about deregulation in Vermont to straighten that out.
Yeah, I would say that there is no affordable housing in Vermont, driven by the property taxes, the increases in electric costs, the increases in fuel costs. It's making it so that it's not affordable for anyone, even if you've already had your house paid off for years. I've been talking with folks who don't even have a mortgage and are struggling to keep up with the cost. So the first thing we do about affordable housing is restructure the education funding, restructure education on the ground to make it more affordable so that we can reduce property taxes. We need to roll back some of the regressive costs that they've put on to electricity and fuel, which also makes it unaffordable to have a house. The average cost to build an apartment unit today is between $400,000 and $500,000. So when you figure the cost of building it, how can you rent that out affordably? The only way is with subsidies. Subsidies are somebody else's tax dollars. And so when we talk about affordable housing, it is an extremely tough problem here in the state because the legislature has made the cost of doing business here, every type from regulation to property taxes, so expensive. As Mark suggested, much of the state, they're trying to stop development in. They're trying to take people like me who own farm and forest land, they're trying to conserve our land. They don't want any development on it. That's why they want Act 250 jurisdiction over residential housing in rural areas, where, I don't know if it's most Vermonters, but most people that I know want to live in the rural communities. Most of the people that I know want to have a small piece of land and a small house where they can have a garden, maybe a few animals, feel like they're independent, be connected to nature. If people want to live in the city, that's great, but let's not make it so expensive to live in the rural communities that people are either forced out of state or into those downtown communities. And then in talking with some of the folks that live in some of the small cities in the state of Vermont, they've given special treatment to those neighborhoods and downtown centers, but in many of those neighborhoods and downtown centers, there's no space left. They're already developed. So the only thing you can do is go up, which there's already a building there, and it's not structured to be built on top of. That means you have to raise the building to start the new building, which makes it unaffordable. And so there's a lot that can be done, but the bottom line is we need to figure out ways to make our tax burden go down, our energy costs go down through all of the regressive taxes and costs that the legislature has implemented over the last 10 years.
Yeah, I'm going to be speaking more from the side of an economist and a former carpenter. I did carpentry to help pay for college in Burlington, where a lot of these zoning laws are. So a third of the state lives in Chittenden County. It's like 200,000 people, approximately, a little bit more now. More land in Burlington is zoned for golf courses than dense urban residential housing. I love golf, but that is pretty heinous. So a lot of that is these intransigent city officials do not want to fix the zoning laws to allow, even if we could raise the buildings, and there are many derelict buildings in Burlington to be raised, they couldn't get through the zoning process because it's such a patchwork that it couldn't be done. I was working on houses on Bishop Street, for example. I worked on a house there that definitely should have been torn down, built in 1890. At one point, a beautiful stately home, but a disaster with knob and tube wiring now. And instead of tearing it down, which would have been cheaper, they had to renovate it and they built an ADU on the back that cost them an untold fortune to get approved. So there's a lot of microeconomic problems, and Democrats don't want to tackle these political issues for whatever reason.
You know, I graduated college with a minor in mathematics, and then I got an MBA, and then I went into data communications, where it was either a 0 or a 1 or protocol error. But you look at the math today that they don't understand. Arlington, they're doing an affordable housing project for $6.35 million to provide 1 new unit. That's not affordable. I was talking with the parents of a young man down in Bennington. He's building a 720 square foot apartment over a garage on a piece of land he got. It's going to cost him $500,000. It's the regulations. You know, he's having to build 8-inch walls on this thing because of the residential energy code. There had to be a mound system in there because the state doesn't allow conventional septic systems anymore. And this regulation is just driving up the cost of these housing units, so that what could be built for $100 a square foot years ago, now is $700 a square foot. Vermont's got to get out of the business of housing and let Kel do it and Habitat for Humanity, where they can do it for
Who else? Nope, okay, you're gonna go throw the ball up for another jump.
A lot of times, Republicans are, and especially here in Vermont, are accused of not caring about our environment. But often I find that it's Republicans who care more about clean water, clean air, maintaining our natural habitats, whereas others are more focused on CO2 reduction. And I'm curious to know what you all think about what your vision for environmentalism in Vermont is and should be, and how you would go about policy to maintain a clean environment. What do you think that might be?
Can I start off?
Yeah.
I have to ask permission. You know,
You hit the button.
okay, there we go. You know, you think about Burlington, the progressive mecca of Vermont, and how they're so concerned about the environment that they've never bifurcated their sewage system. So every time that it rains real hard, they dump another 500,000 gallons of raw sewage into Lake Champlain. You know, you can dance all around and say, oh, we're kumbaya about the environment. But when the rubber hits the road, it's the Republicans who really care about the ecology of the state and the wildlife of the state and maintaining our natural environment. It's not the Republicans who have decided to paper the countryside with the black billboards of solar power and scalp the mountaintops of our state to put in giant bird choppers that are pretending to generate electricity. And so Republicans, and not Democrats and progressives, are the real champions of the environment. One other thing, I'm going to say this real quick. We get down on Democrats a whole lot, okay? And I think we do that in error, because there are no real Democrats anymore. The Democratic Party has been hijacked by the progressives when they couldn't do the job themselves. John is certainly an example of that. Jim Benning, many people I know who now we identify as being Republicans. It's really, we're old blind Democrats, conservative Democrats. There are no conservative Democrats anymore. So let's be real careful when we're putting all the Democrats in a basket, okay? Because we need some of those people to vote for us to make this all happen.
That we do. Anybody else?
Yeah, a couple things. H. Brook just made a really good point. You can't win a statewide election in Vermont without Democrats. We don't need the progressives, but we need Democrats. And one of the things that I've been excited about traveling around the state is how many Democrats I've run into who feel just like me, that feel that the party has left them. The party's been taken over by the progressives. Here's some real basic math. We have 90,000 Republicans. We have 90,000 independents. We have 225,000 Democrats. I cannot win on Republican votes. So when I talk, I try not to blame it all on the Democrats, though some of them are responsible as well. I blame it on the majority in the legislature. I blame it on the progressives. I blame it on the liberals. And now back to the original question, which was the environment. I've considered myself an environmentalist my whole life, but down in that state house, the faux environmentalist hated me because I didn't agree that you can address climate change by blowing the top off Lowell Mountain and building a super highway and pouring thousands of yards of concrete to put up windmills that generate money for a Canadian multinational corporation. And I was relentless as a senator, and I finally, after 6 years of beating the drum, got the noise standards changed on wind, and that finished it off for now, industrial wind. But they're still trying, and they will figure out ways around it. But that is not helping the environment. That's doing more destruction than good. When we look at the Liberals' energy policy, They want all of our transportation to be electric cars. But they don't want to talk about what's going on in the Congo. And if you haven't heard of the book Cobalt Red and you're interested, it is worth a read. There are also a couple of interviews, one Joe Rogan interview, one Meghna Chakravarty interview with the author who literally risked his life to be embedded in the Congo and tell the story of what's happening in over 70% of the mining of cobalt. Over 70% of the cobalt in the world that's used for batteries from our cell phones to cars is mined in the Congo by slave and child labor. They are destroying the environment and they are destroying the people, but it then gets shipped to China where they abuse the labor and the environment. It's turned into batteries, but somehow, miraculously, by the time it gets to Vermont, it's green. The same thing's happening with solar panels. The majority of them are being built in China. The majority of them are being built with coal power and being shipped over here on giant freighters that are run with number 6 oil or crude oil, and somehow when they get here they're green. And so we cannot be doing destruction to a people and an environment on the other side of the planet and say that we're doing something good for the planet when it gets here.
With the environment, right now we seem to be on a track of human interaction with things is bad. So we don't want humans interacting with the forest, we don't want humans interacting with the rivers. We look at the wildfires around the world, and it's when we've stopped allowing natural, low-intensity fires to clean out the underbrush that we have these large fires that do things like destroy 14,000 houses when my parents' house was burned in California back in 2018. I think the same thing with the rivers. You talk to the old timers that used to run the road crews in Vermont. They get gravel from the rivers. We'd have better fishing holes in the rivers. We'd have better swimming holes in the rivers. And we didn't have the flooding because the rivers had more capacity themselves and we weren't relying entirely on the floodplains. So I think we've got to go back and look at some of these environmental policies and ask, is the hands-off that we're doing a little bit too much hands-off? And is there opportunity to be a little bit more hands-on to help with flood resiliency and some of these other challenges we've got today?
I like the environment very well. It's green. This is Vermont. This is a green mountain state. I love green. My t-shirt's green. My lawn signs are green. I'm running against Becca Balint, the queen of green, but not because I'm mean. Because these people are absurd. Absolutely absurd. Global Warming Solutions Act, let's reduce carbon. What makes this green? CO2? That's 6th grade science. We all went to 6th grade here. None of you were Abraham Lincoln, who only had a 3rd grade education. It's 6th grade science. If you reduce carbon, CO2, from 0.04% down to 0.02%, or 0 carbon, Lord have mercy, there won't be anything green left here. What's green produces oxygen for us to live and the animals. I like green.
Now we're down to the last segment of our presentation tonight, and that is where you all come in. If anybody has any questions for the candidates, you can ask somebody specific, or you can ask the whole panel.
This is a general question for the panel. As everybody knows, California is probably the wackiest state in the entire nation and has seen people flooding out. What can you do to get Vermont to think independently and untether itself from California with things like the electric vehicle mandate and the other policies that we've said, yes, we'll do what California's doing?
I transparency back to the government. We need to work all together and empower the voice of the people, so that the everyday people that's hardworking and living in Vermont realize what's happening in Montpelier, which to this point, a lot of times they don't realize what's happening until after the fact. They get bills passed and laws and restrictions put on them, and they don't even realize it and what happened until it goes into effect. And so we need to become a more transparent government. We need to let the people and the voters and the citizens of Vermont know what's happening in Montpelier to our representatives and to our senators before we vote on things, not after. And that way they can speak to our senators and our representatives and give their opinion on things and say, hey, this is going too far. We're not California, we're Vermont. And but the way it is now, as things happen, the government, the legislature passes bills and everyday people find out about it after the fact. So we need to turn that around and enable and empower the voice of the voters once again. And we do that by transparency and by making it clear what's happening in Montpelier, so they can let their voice be heard. And then as legislators, we need to listen to what they say and act on that.
John, then Gerald? Oh, sorry.
I think the other part of it is cut the tethers of the special interest. Right now, the legislature appears to be acting solely on behalf of the special interest and not the people. You look at the Clean Heat Standard or Affordable Heat Act, Act 18, the people resoundingly told the legislature, no, we can't afford this. What did they do? They voted it in anyways, and then when the governor vetoed it, they overrode the governor's veto. We need to cut the special interest out of the equation.
The first thing we need to do is elect more Republicans. and so we need you folks to not only make sure you get out and vote, but we need everybody to talk to their family, their friends, their neighbors. All of us candidates need support. We need help getting signs out. We need funds for our campaign. We need people to write letters to the editor. But nothing is going to change if we allow the supermajority to continue. These guys really need your help. And so anybody you can recruit to help them, please do. We have got to get that Senate because we don't have enough candidates running for the House of Representatives this year to even get to a point where we can sustain a governor's veto, even if we win every one. So the Senate is so important, and my race is very important too, because I get a vote. If it comes to a situation where there's a tie, I get to break that vote. So that's what I would hope that you would do first.
That's a great question. I actually asked myself that a few months ago. And so I did some research, and maybe many of you know about this, but it goes all the way back to 1970, an article called Jamestown 70, and then a Playboy article after that about how to create a state that could be like a petri dish and come up with good ideas and circulate them around the country and see if things would work. That's gone off the rails, and so it's become agenda-driven, and I think I've referenced people to take a look at Vermont Daily Chronicle. Interesting piece about that the lawyer that wrote Jamestown 70, I found out who it was, and I emailed him and said, hey, could you just get in touch with me? But an hour later, he calls me up and said, I already donated to you. I'm like, oh, I'm not kidding. I was like, no, I didn't. I wanted to find out about this article. He's like, I regret writing that article. And he's like, you know who helped me with that? I said, Hillary Rodham. He's like, yeah, law. And so he regretted some of the things. But I think we look at that, and kind of the idea behind it is maybe not that bad of an idea. People, in their community generating good ideas. But like I said, it's gone off the rails with an agenda. We see that even with the Green New Deal and the green energy, and now we have Stellantis, firing 2,500 people because of things like that. So it's not working. Good ideas can be good ideas, but agenda-driven, forcing things is really the underlying problem. Republican Party, free, open markets. Democrat, progressive left, forcing an agenda. That's the difference, really. So, thank you.
Yeah, I have a quick question. Why were you pitting on California? Do you know that the
They're dumb.
You know what the
That's
number
why
one
it's
state?
dumb. The whole state is a dump, from the top of the state to the
Yeah,
bottom of the dump.
What's the number one state as far as tax
There's
burden?
3 states that we live next to. California, New York, and this state are the 3 worst states in the United States. And then they break down after that. I've been doing politics since I'm 18 years old, and I'm now 72. I know the man on the end, I was talking to him, and I know Uncle Joe there. Okay, I came here to ask questions, not to hear just what you want to tell us. I want to hear what you're physically going to do, each one of you, against your purpose that you're running against. How you're going to know things about Bernie and how you're going to finish him off to win the place. The same thing with him on that corner there is Kathy James. How are you going to come after Kathy James and finish her off so she never does this again? How are you going to fix our county with all the fentanyl, the drugs that are coming here, the kids that are, the people coming from across the border? You say you're going to close the border. What size fence are you going to put up? I'm very into this every single day of my life. Okay? But like I tell everyone, there's one thing in the world that's the most powerful thing, and it's the stock market. It don't hate Republicans, it don't hate Democrats, it don't hate independents. Because today and yesterday was the first day, 41,580 was the stock market. So rich people don't care about you. He doesn't care about some poor guy that gets up at 6 o'clock in the morning, goes to work, comes home, feeds his face, and has to go back the next day with 2 jobs. Then one day he looks around and he says, why do I have to live here? I had a very good friend here, 4 generations. 4 generations. She packed it all up, went to Tennessee. She says, why should I be here? No taxes, no death taxes, no state taxes. Why should I live here? I'm going to live twice as better here. We lost in this county, right here, 2,000 people since 2020. Do you know that? Do you know that?
I know there's an exodus.
It's an exodus. Look at the room, gentlemen. Look at it. Everybody here is 60 and above. The average age in the state of Vermont is 62 and a half. The only reason why they stay here is because they don't want to move. Young people look around. I talk to them all. There's one thing I learned. The more people you talk to, the more you learn. Okay?
I think
You never ask questions. I sat here for an hour and a half listening to each one of you say what you're going to do. We're going to fix this. We're going to fix that. We're going to fix this. In this town, we have a shortage of 4 officers. 4. Okay? Our town captain of the police here refuses to go to any town meetings. Mike Hall went to every year he was here and explained what was going on. I had a problem here. I had a policeman come to me and arrest me because he said I threatened somebody with a gun. You know what happened to that policeman? His name is Chris Mason. Do you know who he is, sir? You know who he is? Okay, he's the only police officer in the state of Vermont, except for one in 1962, okay, that has gotten kicked off the force. The first time I ever met him 5 years ago, I told him he was a smelly, disgusting
Okay,
cop.
all right. I think you've made some good points, but you're taking us a little bit off the rails here. So I understand.
Nobody wants to talk about it.
Well,
They
let's
want
give
to
it-
make it to
let-
the end of the. Listen 1 second.
I've been listening to you for 5 minutes. You've had more time than a lot of these folks to talk, and you're starting to
But
defame
nobody-
people
I met
that
this
have
man
nothing to
last year. I
do.
told him he wouldn't win then, he's not going to win now, unless he sits down and says, how can I affect
Well,
Bernie Sanders?
let's give folks an opportunity to answer some of your questions about young people, and if you want to, and if they're interested in answering about their tactics about how they're going to take on their opponents, I think we'll give them an opportunity to do that.
Listen, we're not here for a
But we're running out of time for anybody to say anything. I think you're starting to monopolize this.
Okay,
So
go ahead,
let's
talk.
give other people an opportunity. Now, he's said a lot of things.
Lord have mercy.
No, because you're wasting your
Hey,
time.
now you sit
Once I
down.
spoke, you have to talk about what you're going to do.
I've been here 51 years.
That's gonna be
I remember,
45.
shut up.
That's enough, pal.
I remember when the war on drugs started here, and it's only gotten worse. Half the people I grew up with are dead. The other half of the people that aren't dead moved out of the state. It's bad here. Opioids, fentanyl, heroin, gangs coming up out of Holyoke, direct traffic out of New York City up to Bennington, you know, Rutland corridor, Springfield, Holyoke, New York City, up through Brattleboro, St. Johnsbury. It's bad. Bath salts, crime, and people think it's great. It ain't great. They're seeing it. People I know that never locked their doors before sleep with a Glock on the table and a shotgun beside their bed.
So how are you gonna?
What are we gonna do? Start prosecuting people. They don't prosecute people because if they don't prosecute people, well, there's no crime, is there? It's a crime. It's a crime what they're doing. It's a crime what they're doing to the people of the state, Democrat, Republican, Independent, all of them. It is a crime. Who is this Attorney General? Is she a George Soros plant?
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah? We got more than one George Soros prosecutor in this state.
Friends with Sarah George, too.
Yeah. We don't have all the answers, but we need to work together with the people. And I don't really care what you identify as. You know, I'm running Republican. I got the Republican nomination. I got the Libertarian nomination too. I want Democrats to vote because I know honest Democrats here. One that used to be, but I know people that ride around on a farm tractor all day and they're Democrats and they never lie to you. You know, 80% majority of the people have common values, and it's those 80% that are going to make the difference. Nobody can do it alone. And anybody says they can, they're a fool. We need those people, the far right radical left and the far right radical right, keep on dividing everybody. What's the point? We're in this together. We're Americans. We're doing it for love of God and country, not for fame and fortune.
You know, one of your questions, Larry, was how are we going to expose the opponents and win the vote? And John did a good job articulating that. You know, we need your help. There's censorship going on in
You
this
have
country.
my help, 152%, you know that.
Yep.
Okay,
But let
you're
me-
still not getting to the point of Kathy James and how you're gonna beat her this time. I wanna know how, this is what all my friends want to
Okay,
know. They
but-
wanna vote for you, but they want to know how you're gonna beat them. Let's hear it.
He's had his.
But I'm not running against Kathleen James. I'm running against Seth Bongartz.
Kathy James is a mucus of this county. She's been here for many years.
Larry.
Please let them talk.
Yeah.
Yes.
Each one of my opponents are complicit in the costs of the carbon taxes that Vermonters are being suffocated right now. So we're running education campaigns to say, that guy did it. There's a PAC in Vermont, Right for Vermont, that's been running this all spring and summer. So we're continuing to do that, and we're transitioning to the point of, in addition to exposing what Seth Bongartz and others have done to create these unaffordability issues, here are the candidates that have solutions for this. So it's an education process, and like John said, it's back to front page forum, social media, and letters to the editor, and direct advertising, direct mail. You know, that's how we're going to educate people. And people are going to be upset because the gloves are off, because I'm calling Seth Bongartz out for his voting record. But that's his voting record. It's not a character assassination. It's how he's voting to represent you and I.
Just briefly, Joe is right on, because we can win if we expose the voting records of these people and tell our voters they have a choice. But the biggest problem is trying to educate voters. One of our biggest problems is a lot of these folks go and knock on everybody's door, the person who they're talking to goes, oh, they're such a nice person. They came and knocked on my door and I had a very pleasant conversation, but they have no idea how they voted. So we, the candidates, and you, the people who follow politics, need to make sure that when you're writing those letters, you're saying, I'm supporting Joe because Joe wants to change things, and this is what the Democrats that are currently in office voted for. They voted to make Vermont more unaffordable. But that has to be explained. And when you're having conversations with your friends and your family and your neighbors, you need to have these discussions, because we don't want people voting for somebody just because they think they're a nice person. We will never get things changed that way. And Joe's absolutely right. This isn't attacking people. As long as you're telling the truth about their record, you're just telling the story of why you're different than the other person. And we have to get better at that.
Okay. Oh, we have 5 minutes left and 3 hands up, so.
I didn't see who was first. We'll go you, and you.
This has to have to do with the environment a little bit, and this is a vital issue which many people are not aware of, and it goes much deeper than climate change. And this issue is geoengineering, aka cloud seeding, climate manipulation, weather modification. Now, my question to you is, after researching geoengineering, and you can do that on geoengineeringwatch.org, or there's a Vermont group, 2 gentlemen who have tons of articles, ourgeoengineeringage.org. Now, after researching this and understanding it, would you prioritize legislation, as other states are doing, to ban the aerosol spraying of nanoparticulates in our skies, which fall to the earth and are toxic to our air, water, food, soil, and all life, plant and animal, and human? So that's, a lot of people aren't aware of this. They hide it under the rug. It's very serious, and it's happening over our skies, and it can also create these tremendous weather events that are horrific.
And if you want some pictures of it over Vermont, I've taken several, so I can send them to you.
Would anybody like to answer that question?
I'll say yes. I would look at do the research, and if I was, convinced that it is happening and it's the science behind it, yes, I would support it.
Good. Mark, let's hear it.
God bless RFK Jr.
Yes!
How about Health and Human Services, Director of Health and Human Services?
Anyone else?
I'll just touch on it very briefly, but yes, anytime humans try to manipulate any environment, there are unintended consequences, so I don't support any of that kind of manipulation.
All right, yes.
And yes, I don't want to mess with what God created.
Very good. Now, next.
I don't need a microphone, I got a big mouth.
No, you do for the camera.
So my name is Pam Baker, I'm from Halifax, and I have a lot of things to share with you guys. I could start with the fact that Japan spends $39,000 US equivalent dollars to educate their students from kindergarten to 12th grade. And they are far better educated than our people. We need to do a better job there. We need to figure this out. We followed them with car manufacturing. Why can't we do it with education? Casey Coda of Coda Oil in the Bellows Falls, Brattleboro area, he told us a couple weeks ago that in 1971, Vermont spent, and don't quote me exactly on this, about 170 million fuel gallons per heating season, and last year they spent 70 million, or they used 70 million rather. So how do we make that improvement? That's what we should be looking at. How do we do that? Let's do that again. Let's do that more, right? So we didn't have all this Global Solutions Warming Act back in the 70s. So how did we do that? Let's get that fuel oil dealer and and get his brain up in the House of Representatives and figure it out.
They won't listen to him.
I know, but we'll just keep pushing until they finally listen. The other thing I want to talk about is the fact that RFK Jr. slipped up accidentally during his conversation with Tucker Carlson, and he told us how to talk to Democrats. And it's not the way we've been doing it. So I encourage you all to listen to him, and listen to him twice, and listen to how he says how you have to convince them, because going at them with facts just shuts them down, and they just start calling you names. So we have to figure out how to talk to them and get them on our side. And that's what we need to do, because we're not going to win without them. We're just not going to get there. Whether we like it or not, we need them. So, and that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Very good points. Is there one more question? Because we're at the end of our time, but I'll let you, if we can be quick.
Brooke, since it is unconstitutional against the Vermont Constitution how we are doing our elections, has anybody brought any suit against the state to hold them accountable?
Sure, that's a yes. Yes, I have brought 2 suits already, and I have a 3rd one that's in process right now. My problem is that the state Supreme Court and the lower court in both Washington and Orange County have decided that, and everybody know about what standing is in court suits? Okay. They have decided that somehow I don't have standing to bring the question. Now, I'm only a taxpayer, a voter. I'm a justice of the peace in my town, which means I'm a member of the Board of Civil Authority. I'm the town chair of the Republican Party in the town of Washington. I'm the treasurer of the Orange County Republican Committee, and I'm a delegate to the state committee, and I also serve as a member of the Republican Election Integrity Board. I don't know what else I need, and they refuse to tell me, okay? In other cases, in other times, someone who was complaining about Vince Aluzzi being on the ballot, this is in 2010, merely the fact that he could vote, but confessed that he would not vote in an election, gave him standing. In the Ferry case, out of the 12 litigants in there, 2 of them happened to be citizens of the town of Mount Peel, and therefore all of the litigants suddenly had standing. But somehow I bring a constitutional issue of the unconstitutionality of our entire election system. They decide I don't have standing. And all I can do is keep going back. They can't say that the decision's been made because the Supreme Court has never gone to the issues of the case. They always say, oh, no standing, and we're out. So,
Brooke.
Maybe as Secretary of State, you would have standing.
Yes. Well, interestingly enough, I point out in my current episode that the Secretary of State, like I as a Justice of the Peace, are sworn to uphold the state constitution and shall do nothing injurious to it. And certainly Sarah Copeland Hazen, by executing an election that is unconstitutional, is certainly breaking her oath of office.
Can you do it as a class action on behalf of a large number of voters?
Here comes my problem. I'm a pro se litigant, so I can represent no one but myself. Okay, I have unnamed attorneys that help me out, but they would come to my house and kill me if I revealed who they were. I've had this problem in all of the election cases I've brought, because the attorneys point out that they cannot be identified with this because they'd still like to have a business and clients. Okay, that's a very difficult thing. Does that answer the question?
Bruce, Brooke, this is fascinating. We are, however, at the end of our time. We've reached the 2 hours. So I just want to thank all the candidates who took the time to be here. I want to thank all of you who came out to learn a little bit about the campaigns and the issues on what is probably the most beautiful day of the year. And I just wanted to echo in my last thoughts what many of these folks were saying that, you know, in order to win these races, it's not one little thing that happens. It's not a silver bullet. It's everybody writing letters to the editor, talking to your friends in the grocery line. You know, it's a whole bunch of little things that happen. Letters, phone calls, helping somebody go door to door, hosting a house party for them. It is a team effort, and we've all got to work together if we're going to change Montpelier. So thank you very much, and everybody have a wonderful night, and good luck to all you guys on the campaign trail.